Story 1. Don't feed the trolls. Nowadays, the Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok algorithms are focused on triggering users with rage bait. Story 2. Sometimes the only response to a frequently asked question is to consult the frequently asked questions page. Story 3. If you do not like something, do not interact with it. Not everything is for you. Story 4. I don't know if etiquette is the right word, but keeping one's identity hidden behind a screen name and lying or omitting one's age, sex, and location when asked was general advice. MySpace killed that mentality. Story 5. There were small chat rooms where you could get to know people over time, not in a one-to-one way but gradually. In one chat room, there was a man from Scotland working on an oil rig off the coast of somewhere. Getting online was difficult for him, so whenever he entered the chat room, everyone would stop the conversation, greet him, ask how things were going, and then go back to the previous conversation. We created communities whether we bonded over a television show, a band, or having a child with special needs. Reddit is nice, and sometimes I recognize a poster from the cooking and baking subreddits who shares my fondness for all things lemon, but it is rare. I am not sure if it was etiquette per se, but knowing the other people made everyone nicer. Story 6. The internet stayed online. No one talked about what happened here out there. The worlds were too different. Now they are the same. Story 7. Tell others before you make a phone call. Do not simply pick up the phone and disconnect them from the internet. Story 8. Asking for a source was standard. The burden of proof was on the person making the claim. Now people get angry when challenged and respond with deflections such as, do your own research. Story 9. The internet is for information sharing, not for commerce. Story 10. Ensure the website can be viewed in a text-friendly format for people whose devices cannot display images. Story 11. Only include the parts of the post you are commenting on in your post, not the entire post. Bandwidth is expensive, after all. Also, your signature should be separated from your post by a line with 2 hyphens and a space. Hyphen hyphen space, not just hyphen hyphen. Story 12. Users must be at least 18 years old. Children are not permitted on the site. Story 13. Spoiler space so you do not ruin movies, books, and so on for people who actually want to be surprised. Story 14. I think the main issue is email addresses. It was strongly discouraged to include any identifying information in an email address. Now most addresses include the person's real name. When I worked at Goldman Sachs, you would still see a few problematic examples. Story 15. Never meet people from the internet. Back then, it seemed like everyone online was a 47-year-old trying to kidnap you. These days, people are getting married, starting companies, and sharing rides with total strangers they met on apps. It has almost flipped to asking, if you have not met someone online first, how else would you know them? Story 16. To stay anonymous online, my mom told me not to tell anyone my name or where I am from on the internet. Now an entire generation keeps falling for artificial intelligence scams, and people's identities are all over the place. Story 17. Don't spread someone's private information. In the past, privacy was respected. Now it is treated as content. Story 18. In the past, there was a finger command on Unix systems at my college that provided a person's real name and either their home address or, more often, their work address. It also showed how long the user had been logged in. We had access to real names of random people on the network and did nothing about it. It was no big deal. Most people on the network then were scientists or students. Some servers or Usenet groups had documents called netiquette, which we mostly followed. Trolls were dealt with swiftly. That seems unthinkable now, when many people on the network show very little critical thinking. Story 19. Show the finished product first. For do-it-yourself projects, recipes, or art, if you are posting a process, the first image should be of the final product. Story 20. Do not say anything online that you would not say to a person's face. This is why we cannot have nice things, you pricks. And yes, I would call you a prick in person. Story 21. Grammar was never perfect, but people used to downvote poor grammar and spelling. Nobody cares anymore. Story 22. It was not a rule per se, but when someone was rude and argumentative online in ways you would not be in person, it was considered cowardly. People were sarcastically described as having internet courage, meaning they were only brave enough to say such things because they did not have to look the other person in the eye or risk being punished or slapped for their rudeness. Nowadays, being a dick when arguing online is so normalized that it is not noteworthy. Story 23. Do not believe everything you read or see on the internet. Ironically, that advice came from the same people who now accept online content uncritically. Boomers are neat. Story 24. Anti-etiquette, I guess, but there used to be a big thing about posting the word first as the initial comment, which was super annoying because one, who cares, and two, you would end up with a dozen hopeful first posts messing up the start of any thread. It was a huge moderator annoyance back then, but I have not seen it in years, even in places with chronological comments. Story 25. We used to lurk before posting, learning the tone, the history, and the unspoken hierarchies and respecting the invisible culture. Now the internet is an open mic with everyone shouting their biography. The tragedy is not rudeness but the loss of apprenticeship. We no longer learn by watching. We perform by default. Story 26. Spell out each acronym the first time it is used, unless it is widely known. Story 27. Do not be a dick was the basic rule and moderation policy on many sites. For a long time it worked. Story 28. A lot of fandom etiquette seems to have vanished among the young ones. If you do not like something, do not read it. Do not leave criticism, constructive or otherwise, unless explicitly asked. Story 29. Do not send large email attachments. Once I could not retrieve my email for a couple of weeks because someone sent a large attachment and my 56.6 kilobits per second modem would not maintain a stable connection long enough. Story 30. Definitely do not feed the trolls. Now it seems people actively seek them out just to argue. Story 31. I remember being on forums where, if you were caught having an account and you were under 13, you were permanently banned because of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act and Internet Privacy Law. Forum moderators were genuinely afraid that federal authorities would shut them down if children were on their forum. Now you have young children everywhere with smartphones and their own social media accounts. Shaking my head. Story 32. People cared about grammar and spelling. Early internet users wrote as if they were submitting a thesis. Now it is all lowercase chaos, with no punctuation and the occasional crying emoji for emotional range. Story 33. 4fan works. Don't like it, don't read it used to be common. Now it seems not so much, considering how often authors must moderate comments and block people. Story 34. The first person in an argument who compared the other person to Hitler automatically lost the argument, or was that just a rule on Eastside Boxing where I used to post? Story 35. Build community through web rings on your GeoCities or Angelfire website, and include animated graphics interchange format images of caution tape to warn visitors that the site is under construction. Story 36. I saw this mentioned, but it needs to be reiterated. We failed badly at the Don't Feed the Trolls campaign. That is the entire internet now. Everything is bait and people are thriving and profiting from it. Story 37. I have not seen anyone give a cat a cheeseburger in a long while. Story 38. When I got on the internet in 1993, commercial posts were generally frowned upon. There were a few businesses, but pushing a product generally resulted in admonishment. Story 39. Not a rule, but back in the day, whenever you met someone online for the first time, the first question from most keyboards was hi, age, sex, and location. Even as a Brit, these days American Sign Language is the common meaning. I no longer see its old internet usage. Story 40. If you did not like someone or did not want them to know your online username, there was no way for them to find you online. Much remained anonymous. Also, the only way to get someone's online messaging username was to ask them in person for their AOL Instant Messenger username or an equivalent. So catfishing and online bullying were less common, though not absent. Story 41. Oh man, before forums, electronic mail lists made you worry that your post or electronic mail was not of sufficient quality before you hit send. Story 42. Almost 50 degrees Fahrenheit here. I was first online on Q-Link as a child, before Internet Relay Chat in the 1990s. I know that does not involve etiquette, but it relates to the early internet, and I just wanted to say that. Story 43. Keeping your mouth shut unless you have something of value to add is a practice that has been abandoned. Story 44. Instead of making everything about politics, people used to just stick to slurs. Story 45. For those new here, people would ask age, sex, and location to find out basic details. It was an unwritten rule not to lie about it. It is long gone now. I partly blame computer nerds. It was better when the internet was mostly 19-year-old women from California. Story 46. Old school. Telling people when you are leaving a conversation so you do not leave them hanging. Semi-old. Do not feed the trolls was advice before platforms changed their systems to enable trolls, bots, and other manipulative accounts to increase engagement. Platforms now profit from misinformation because people try to correct it and then argue, which increases ad exposure and engagement. This practice is deliberately unethical and harmful to society. Story 47. Do not spam. Then Cantor and Siegel spilled the beans with their green card lottery. Story 48. Godwin's law no longer applies when people are actual Nazis. Story 49. The old internet was much more generational. If you were on it in 2000, you were tech-savvy and likely under the age of 30. Story 50. It used to be somewhat rude to hang out on a message board and never post anything. People who did that were called lurkers. Story 51. It is not a matter of etiquette, but the overall intelligence level of internet users is now significantly lower than before. Story 52. Waiting until at least the breasts were visible before you started jerking it. That is pretty much an obsolete rule since the downfall of dial-up. Story 53. If you compare anyone to Adolf Hitler, you have lost the debate. Now it seems there are an awful lot of people out there who are that bad. Story 54. Before automated content moderation, it was common to come across some of the most vile content on the internet. Story 55. You would join those web rings on your GeoCities website, full of random graphics, interchange format images, and perpetually under construction, so people would visit other cool web pages and you would leave a signature in the guest book when you visited one. Story 56. If something on the internet makes you angry, walk away from the computer. It used to be that being on the computer was a conscious choice. Good luck doing that now that the internet is literally in your pocket, everywhere you go and at all times. People have access to the internet while watching a movie, looking for directions, ordering food, and even after going to bed. It is no longer a conscious choice. Combined with the attention economy, this is a near-perfect explanation for the state of the web today. Story 57. Do not revive old threads. I still get replies to 9-year-old YouTube or Reddit comments from someone simply saying yeah or neat. People used to respect old threads and would at least apologize if they had a good reason to revive them. Story 58. I'm sure there are some of us old enough to remember when it was just a way to converse with other people before flame wars became a thing. Now it is just a way of life. Story 59. Believe it or not, in the early 1990s on Usenet there was an etiquette against spam advertising. There were no moderators and no way to ban anyone, and yet there was surprisingly no advertising until the first incident in April 1994. The internet has been all downhill since then. Cantor and Siegel sent their advertisement with the subject Green Card Lottery Final One to at least 5,500 Usenet discussion groups, an enormous number at the time, rather than cross-posting a single copy of the message to multiple groups so a reader would only see it once, which was considered common courtesy. They posted separate postings in each newsgroup so a reader would see it in every group they read. Their internet service provider, Internet Direct, received so many complaints that its mail servers crashed repeatedly for the next 2 days, and it promptly terminated their service. Story 60. One guideline specific to Usenet was to keep your posts brief, so as not to waste bandwidth. Story 61. Downvotes on Reddit are for irrelevant comments, not for disagreement. Story 62. Upvoting or downvoting is meant to indicate whether a comment contributes to the conversation. Nowadays, it seems to have become a way to show agreement or disagreement with the comment. Story 63. Mom, don't pick up the phone. I have been downloading this single audio file for at least 45 minutes, and there is half an hour remaining. Please. Story 64. Read the text below and correct spelling errors. Expand all acronyms. Remove meaningless repetition, correct punctuation, and remove special characters and links to make the text suitable for Azure text-to-speech artificial intelligence. Read the whole thread before replying. Place your reply below the content you are replying to. Output only content. No yapping. Story 65. Please paste the text to be processed. Also confirm, should I expand all acronyms into their full forms? For example, NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Story 66. Hi, I am 55 years old. I logged on to my first bulletin board system at 13 and the internet at 18 while in college. The difference between then and now in terms of etiquette is that there used to be respect for education and intelligence. If you ask users on Reddit who their favorite public figures are, you will get responses like Dolly Parton or Keanu Reeves, not Steve Wozniak or Linus Torvalds. In the past, internet users were smarter and respected engineers, historians, and scientists. The modern internet is more oriented toward entertainers. Story 67. Top quoting. Lots of email systems put the text you are replying to at the bottom. We used to put it at the top. It became really confusing when it was a mixed conversation. Story 68. It was more a norm than manners. There weren't any kids in primarily adult spaces. If you were a kid and lied to get in, you were no longer a kid, you were 32 with a mortgage until the cash was cleared. You mostly lurked. If you talked to someone, you kept your story straight. When it inevitably got weird, you said your boss was calling and that you would talk to them later. You never told anyone you were underage. Now kids will lie to get in and then admit they are kids. They complain after seeing what they went there to see, act bossy toward others and push for interaction, then reveal their age. I know they are not all part of To Catch a Predator, but it seems they have no sense at all. Story 69. Do not feed the trolls. Some trolls now promote each other aggressively, and there are government-sponsored troll farms. Story 70. Make sure no one is on the phone before you log on. Story 71. I am not very old, but I remember when you could purchase a software version outright without paying a monthly subscription. Most companies released new versions occasionally, and users who wanted new features could repurchase the updated version. Now you pay a monthly subscription for updates that arrive constantly, and it often feels like they rarely add meaningful features, they just shuffle menus and add artificial intelligence everywhere. As a result, software, especially games, is often released unfinished and untested because companies get the money up front and fix major bugs on the fly. Story 72. This probably does not fall under the category of etiquette per se, but I lament the death of the small niche forum where users really got to know each other and would sometimes even become in real-life friends. Reddit is fine and has its advantages in terms of reach, but I feel that the scope and scale of it are inherently biased against the same tight-knit community feel of old-school internet message boards. It also tends to favor quick-hit quips and short posts rather than more elaborate discussion. Story 73. Never reveal personal information. Somehow a sociopath with the eyes of a dead robot managed to convince everyone otherwise. Story 74. Never use your real name online. Always use a handle. Places like Facebook should be avoided. Story 75. No spoilers. Seriously, if you try to avoid a spoiler when answering, people get just as mad at you. Story 76. It depends on how old you consider the old internet to be. Top posting is a violation that bugs me on a daily basis. Back when people were capable of a 60-second or longer attention span, it was considered required when responding to a post or email to comment inline and delete portions of the original that were not salient to the response. Now everyone top posts, and emails in a long thread contain the full contents of 100 or more previous messages. It makes searching through content by keyword virtually impossible, and to find the point someone is responding to you need to scroll through prior overly verbose emails. Story 77. You would start a conversation with someone when you were both online, say be right back anytime you would step away, and say goodbye when the chat was over. Story 78. I feel old. People talk about AOL Instant Messenger and reminisce about 2005, while I remember early dial-up bulletin board systems from around 1992. Modem speeds were 300, 1200, 2400, and 56 kilobits per second. You had to get offline so someone could make a phone call, or you would get kicked off when someone called the house. I remember the Intel 80286 computers and building them yourself. Story 79. Uploading vertical videos was considered absolutely haram until smartphones became widespread around 2013. Story 80. People used to hate vertical videos. Now it's the norm. Story 81. Do not feed the troll. You are being rage-baited left and right, and this is what allowed the worst people to rise to power. The algorithm interprets your reactions as engagement, so it shows hateful content to more people. You do not need to watch that video and leave a comment. Please stop. Story 82. Don't add people you don't know on social media platforms. That was my mother's advice when she was in her 50s, and then at 72 she called me because she thought some 50-something man on an offshore oil rig in Norway was flirting with her on Facebook. She had never met him. She had added him herself. One reverse image search on Google found at least 7 different profiles, each with a different name but the same picture, which snapped her out of it, thank God. She was close to being victimized in a romance scam. Now we have entire platforms filled with strangers talking to each other. Story 83. Do your work and get going. Back then, you dialed in, checked your mail, and logged off. Story 84. People used ever-changing song lyrics as their screen name on Microsoft Network Messenger. If you were not doing that, what are you, some kind of weirdo? On that note, people learned to type very fast if they wanted to thrive on it. I was one of them. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.